those of you who may not be that familiar with what even a vestry member is, the vestry is the elected spiritual board of directors, if you will. And like any nonprofit, the vestry has three main tasks. I'm going to go through those quickly and then introduce you to some of our speakers this morning from the vestry. But the vestry has three main responsibilities, the first of which is fiduciary. Think budgets and buildings, to be leaders in the area of stewardship of all that we have been given by our generous God, as Michael said so well in his sermon today, whether it's this campus, our buildings and grounds, the resources that you have offered up to God and entrusted to this community, all of that is cared for by your vestry, who's responsible for budgets and buildings. And then we also have a second main area of responsibility, that is strategic visioning, of helping the parish, not just the vestry, but helping all of us discern God's dream for St. Thomas. Because really only the vestry can focus in on what our future will be, not just like in a year, but like the next 3, 5, and even farther out than that. And so the vestry's job in a very real way is to remember not only the past and the present, but to look ahead and to help us all look ahead to the future. And you'll be hearing more about that in a little bit as we get ready to undertake a strategic plan for St. Thomas. The third piece is the one that honestly is neglected by many boards out there. And that is what I call generative leadership or governance. And that is making sure that your vestry members have time in their meetings to discuss things without having to make a decision, without, it's an opportunity to tackle issues that may be arising in the community or to explore new ideas and initiatives without having to make a quick decision, but it's a sharing of wisdom with each other. And there's something special that when you get Christian leaders together in the same room, working together, it's not like 1 + 1 = 2. There is new life generated, imagination, creativity that comes out of those meetings where we gather together. And so it's more like 1 + 1 = 12. And I'm sure you've experienced this. You've gone into a meeting and you're like, how is this going to go? We have all of this stuff to do. And then you leave and you're like, that wasn't so hard. How did that happen? Well, God showed up profoundly in the work of the board, or in this case, our vestry. And so we had a meeting last week and we left time for generative discussion about our adult education ministries, among other things. We didn't make a decision. We just talked about it and shared our ideas, shared our vision for adult education. So 3 main responsibilities, and the most important thing, of course, is the vestry's own relationship with the living God in Christ, empowered by the Holy Spirit. Nothing is more important, because unlike a typical nonprofit, our vestry are spiritual leaders in partnership with the clergy of the parish. They're spiritual leaders. So they're not just fiduciaries or, strategic thinkers or generative collaborators. They are folks who are spiritual leaders. And so one of the things that we also do at each meeting is we have time for prayer of where is God in your life? Where is God in the life of this community? So I want you to know that the vestry does see themselves not just as your typical nonprofit board members, but as true spiritual leaders here at St. Thomas. Our first area that we want to update you about is parish life. Parish life. This is our parties, events, and gatherings where we break bread, where we laugh, where we very often don't have much of an agenda other than to enjoy each other's presence. But as you've heard me say before, in heaven, there is not going to be an agenda. There will be no minutes in heaven. In heaven, we will adore God and we will enjoy each other's company. So parish life is an anticipation of the heavenly banquet. It is a moment not just of community, but of communion. So with that in mind, I want to invite Liz Went, and is Amy here as well? Okay, Liz is representing along with, I think, Jane. Yeah, okay. So Liz and Jane will say a word about parish life. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. So I'm Liz Went, and everyone knows Jane. And Amy Coomer, who could not be here today, she is traveling. And we are heading up the Parish Life Commission, which was formed out of the Making New History Commission. So Parish Life is about community and fellowship. And church is more than the Sunday service. The liturgy, the Sunday service are the backbones of our church, but the relationships we form and the fellowship that we have is a great, that is also what church is about. A great example of that would be both the barn sale yesterday and the craft show. I know I stopped by the craft show and it was wonderful. I got to catch up with a bunch of people who I see on Sundays. So the Parish Life Commission is about the life and the activities and the things that we can do as a church to build those bonds. So we have the St. Thomas Seniors, which is headed up by Margaret Wallace, with Mikey Fernley helping, and they are looking to do something in the near future. We also have the newcomers, which is Deb Buck and Kristen Waskowitz-Woods. They had a newcomer get together already, and they've also had one newcomer class, and we welcomed the newcomers last Sunday in church, which was wonderful. I'd never seen that before, and I thought that was amazing. We will be having another newcomer class in January. The Men of St. Thomas's, which is led by David Thayer, and they're gathering in January or February. And then the Women of St. Thomas's, which is Laura Thayer, and she's organizing something for early December. And everyone remembers the wildly successful parish dinner that we had in October. That was Cheryl Brown, and we had over 180 people at the dinner that night, and we had fabulous conversation and fabulous food. We also have the Young Families group, which is led by Emily Lee Heighton and Lila Leonard, and you'll be getting more information about that. All of these groups, you don't have to be, you can be a senior and go to the women's or the men's group. You are not spearheaded into one group, but please let us know if you want to be involved in any of them, and stay tuned for different activities coming forward.
The one thing that I have to add is that while Liz described who is leading each of the subgroups of parish life, we are looking to have a broad participation. Just like at the barn, there's a lot of participation. In parish life, we are looking for people to participate and join in organizing and getting these things off the ground. And so we're excited to have this new commission to bring life and engagement back to St. Thomas.
I want to thank Jane and Liz. Jane, of course, is our senior warden, and her job description is keeping the rector in line. But really, Jane has just been such an amazing senior warden during this transitional time, and we are very, very grateful for her leadership and Liz's leadership. I don't believe Reverend Lorna has made her way down yet she's right there. She's camouflaged over there. So Reverend Lorna, if you could come on over here and update us on what's going on with children and family. She's got a donut. So. Love that hat.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, dear sir. We've been so extremely lucky to have wonderful children with us. And the newcomers who have come recently, newcomers that have come recently have brought their little ones. And they're just absolutely have brought extra joy and extra sounds to our parish. It's pretty wonderful. Sarah Elliott, you guys know who Sarah Elliott is. She's awesome. She's also the one of the godly play teachers for our youngest little ones who are able to sit in class. And she has been working on some learning goals. Basically, what are the things about our faith that we want our children to learn, even at that early age? And in particular, things about the Episcopal Church that we need to learn, which is awesome. So she's written these wonderful learning goals for the younger, so I'd say, age 3 through like age 10. And she shared them with Dave and I, and they really are awesome because that really helps us focus on what needs to be taught to our youngest ones in a church setting. We're making plans for a nursery. We're aiming to have the nursery be open by before Easter. We're putting together a great group of families who are interested in us having great professional people looking after our youngest ones, taking good care of them, and at the same time having the parents be able to be in church and feel okay that the children are safe. That's the most important thing, that they are very safe. So we're looking forward to that. Another thing too is Children's Chapel. You have Children's Chapel once a month. We're aiming to have it every week starting in January. And as Sarah Elliott is taking the lead on this, doing great jobs, doing recruiting. If you're asked, please say yes. And but also, it's wonderful for them to have a time that is made specifically for that age, from age 3 to 7, for them to learn more about their relationship with God, who Jesus is to them, and what is the church community all about at their level, which is wonderful. It's always song and story, and it's really a lot of fun for them, and they enjoy it, so it's really good. So yeah, that's what's going on so far. Many other things going on, but we're very happy with that. Thank you.
We know here at St. Thomas that our learning is lifelong. So we haven't forgotten about our youth and teenagers, and right now that ministry is quiet, but we are going to be working with Reverend Lorna and other vestry leaders on how do we revive our youth ministry. Also, adults. We had a wonderful series of forums this fall on faith and politics, which were some of the best attended forums that we've had in a while. And we got a lot of feedback on those forums that they were relevant. Some other folks were concerned that faith and politics occasionally kind of went too far in certain directions. And so that's something that your vestry has heard, and we will keep in mind for the future, because what we hope for is that all of our offerings will be biblical, theological, nonpartisan types of offerings here week after week. So know that we've heard some of that feedback, but we've also heard a lot of positive feedback. In fact, one newcomer said that a big reason that he was joining the church is that we were taking on relevant issues like we did in the fall. So that was the fall, but looking ahead to the new year, to the winter and spring, I'm very happy to say thanks be to God for the leadership of Wendy and Ginger. Just raise your hands real quick. You don't have to say anything. We're so grateful for their leadership in adult education. Yes, go ahead and applaud them. And we're going to focus winter and spring on the intersection of faith and the arts. So get ready for visual arts, for literature, music, dance. It's going to be a lot of fun. And so the arts are some of the best ways, using our creativity and imagination, to encounter the living God. So you're going to have lots of artists and musicians presenting to you in the winter and spring, including myself. You've heard that Dave is a poet. Well, I'm going to read you some of my poetry. So I'll do that, and you're going to hear it for some other writers as well in our local area. The other thing I want you to know in the more immediate term is we're not done with this year. We, of course, have Advent coming up. It's one of my favorite seasons in the church year. And Michael Smith and I will be leading a 2-week series on Advent theology and music. So we're going to look at theology through the prism of the great hymns of Advent. So Michael and I will be co-teaching that class during the Advent season. Any questions? I don't want to go too fast through all of this. Are there any questions or comments that you have? There'll be other opportunities. Julie.
That it's starting today, and that we'll have a reception on the 23rd from 5 to 7 down in the schoolhouse. There's not a lot of us artists down there, but there are a few, and the ones of us who are down there, we'd love to have people come and just enjoy.
Okay, so there is an art show down at the White Marsh Learning Center,
yes.
And it goes, Julie, from today to
It's January 11th.
January 11th. So lots of opportunities. And when is it open? Is it on the...
There's a special reception on the 23rd of November,
Okay, reception on the 23rd of November, and?
5 to 7 p.m.
Okay, 5 to 7. So, and that is parishioner artwork.
It's parishioner-only artwork, right?
Parishioner-only artwork. You've seen it in the bulletin, but thank you very, very much for that reminder. It's awesome. That goes very well with the theme for adult education. Okay, at this time, I'd like to invite Sharon Werner. We are so blessed to have member Sharon Werner, who is also in charge of our retreat to St. Thomas. She also oversees the White Marsh Learning Center and all of the tenants that are there. But Sharon is going to give you an update on the growth, the wonderful growth of the retreat to St. Thomas ministry. Sharon.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Quick update, just following up on what Julie said. White Marsh Learning Center, we just booked our last room for rent as an art studio, and actually newcomer Dawn Marie, who was recognized last week, has rented that space, turning it into an art studio. We're going to have art classes and some open studio time, so she's really building on that. The Parishioner Art Show, as Julie mentioned, it is parishioner-only artwork, but please bring friends and open community to the reception on the 23rd. And if there is any other artists that we did not reach out to, please, if you'd like to exhibit, there's still time and room. So just let me know. And for the retreat center, we opened in June of 2023. So we've done a lot of growth. The first year from June of 23 to June of 24, we had 14 bookings and about $2,000 in profit. From July of 2024 we're booked out to April of 2025, we have 30 bookings and we are estimated to bring in 15,000. So we have huge growth. So we have a lot of growth opportunities as well. We're in negotiations for some longer term rentals. We've attracted some groups, like we have class retreats that are coming in from private schools that are doing multi-day bookings. So they're bringing in a lot more income in that respect. We've been working on shared space as we grow. We're balancing our church needs and the preschool needs with what we're bringing in from the outside. But we've booked all kinds of groups. We have class retreats, we have garden clubs, we have a lot of church day retreats, writing retreats. We just did an author appearance on Friday night. Some art therapy groups. There's a food fest coming up on December 7th that is open to the public. She exhibited last night and she has the most amazing cookies. So please come. But so we're getting a lot of people in, and she actually runs a group support group. So she's running White Marsh space. We're growing that group support room as well. So we actually have 3 groups that are using that as well now. And they all make donations towards the church. We have, Dave is working on bringing in some more spiritual retreats. So offering quiet days, maybe some guided meditative walks, again, some more day retreat. With some local spiritual leaders. So we've got a lot of growth coming up. We're bringing in people from the community, bringing people to campus. I spoke with one vendor yesterday that they live in Orland. They come by here all the time to go to Fort Washington State Park. And he's like, we've never been here. It's beautiful. I'm like, well, come take your walks here, So we're getting a lot more exposure. A lot of people drive by and haven't been on the campus, and they get here and it's just, it's breathtaking and it's friendly and open, and so we're bringing a lot of community people in, so it's been a really successful thing. So I thank everyone who helped promote yesterday's craft fair. It was hugely successful. We had every single one of the exhibitors complimented, especially as a first-time show, to bring in everybody, and they did great with their sales, so everyone was very happy. And we cross-promoted with the barn sales, so we had people coming to both, so it was fabulous. But I really appreciate everyone's help and support and referring people to the retreat center and just helping bring people in. So thank you.
It's a good problem when you can't find a parking space at church, right? I just have to put this thing on the mic. Hold on one sec. How does that sound? Okay? All right. Pastoral care. We need flower delivery volunteers. This is an easy volunteer opportunity. It's perfect for adults and children. One of my mentors is the retired Bishop of Texas, Claude Payne. And when he was in his 70s, he realized that one of the most profound moments of his spiritual life, and he didn't realize it until he was in his 70s, took place when he was a teenager. And he and his folks delivered flowers to a homebound senior in his childhood parish. And when he knocked on the door that Easter day with this bouquet of flowers and from the altar and gave it to the homebound member of the parish, he could see in her eyes that to her, he was not little Claude, that he was Jesus Christ himself delivering flowers to her, that she was not forgotten, that she was loved and valued. So, we say things sometimes like, oh, it's flower delivery, it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. These ministries make a major impact in people's lives. So if you are interested, talk to Reverend Lorna. She will get you matched up with the right folks. All we need is maybe once a month, once every 6 weeks, you can go and make a delivery of those altar flowers to folks in our parish who are ill, recovering from surgery, or just need to pick me up. Or gratitude. We do it for gratitude as well. Other things on pastoral care. Walking the Mourner's Path. It's called Walking the Mourner's Path, is a lay-led grief ministry that started at an Episcopal church in Arizona and has now gone national. It's lay-led, clergy-supported, and we have Reverend Lorna, Amy Roque, and others who are working on bringing Walking the Mourner's Path to St. Thomas to care for the members of our parish and the community who are grieving. If you're interested in that, Reverend Lorna is the contact. And finally, when you're talking about things like a church database, let's be honest, it's not the most exciting thing in the world. We have a wonderful database called Realm. So why am I telling you about this in conjunction with pastoral care? When we have a good church database or directory, whatever you want to call it, it allows us to better care for each other. Okay, and so we're going to be doing a big update of our database. And I know this is not exciting, but we need your help. All you need to do is update your info, upload a photograph, and we're going to tell you how to do this. Don't worry, there's going to be trainings. There's going to be people with laptops here on Sundays to help you do this if you don't want to deal with it at home. But we're going to give instructions and training, but it is a way to care for you. So if we know your birth date, we can send you a birthday card, all of that fun stuff and things like that. And so the other thing is, very few of you are aware, and we just know this because we're aware of how many logins there are, that the church even has an online directory called Realm. And this is the best part because I use it all the time, we have an app that you can put on your phone. So if I want to know, what's Ginger's phone number again? I can look it up very quickly, and I could call her even from that app in the phone. I can message people. Now, only members are going to have access to this, okay? So don't worry about your information getting out. It's only members who will have access to the database. But what we want to do is make sure that as many of you as possible are using this tool that can be used to care for each other, okay? So don't think of it just as a database. It really is part of our pastoral care. A word about strategic planning. This will be the most important thing that we do together as a community in the next 5 years or so. And all of you have done a strategic plan at work, and I see some eye rolls out there because because everyone has worked hard on a strategic plan in some setting and then seen that plan put up on a shelf where it gathers dust, right? That's not fun. We're not going to do that here. This will be grassroots, meaning it's not just going to be the vestry and the clergy that come up with ideas and then we say, can you please help us do these ideas? No, it's going to come from you. Really, it's going to come from the Holy Spirit. Because what we're doing in strategic planning, just imagine a little sailboat. You're like getting the sail just right to capture the wind of the Holy Spirit. Okay, so we want to be at full sail. That's what strategic planning is all about. We're going to say, Holy Spirit, what are you calling us to be and to do as a Christian community right now? So that is what this strategic plan will be about, but it will be very professional. It'll take us close to a year. It will involve each and every one of you, including our youth and children. Okay, so grassroots, prayerful, led by the Holy Spirit, but also quite professional. And I assure you, this is my promise to you, that we will implement what we vision. Okay? There will be a separate team, in fact, whose ministry will be to implement what God has called us to do. This plan will stretch us, I promise you, in every imaginable way. It won't always be easy, but it will be transformative in the best of ways for St. Thomas. So this is just a little sneak peek. You're going to be hearing more about this. I'm beginning to put together the team for the strategic planning, but I really just want to underscore this. It is the most important thing we will do over the next 3 to 5 years, okay? Let's talk a little bit about finances. I'm going to turn to Phil Ansbach, who is our accounting warden and just amazing leader here at St. Thomas, not just on the money, but also on the grill over at the Garden of Eden, right? And many other ministries that Phil's involved in. How about a round of applause for Phil? He's an amazing leader.
The numbers aren't going to change, Dave, just because you did that. I'm reasonably confident that everybody in this room, including me, is thinking the exact same thing. I am so tired of talking about finance. This is exhausting. But it is important because it allows us to do the things we want to do here. I think the budget has often been referred to as a statement of values. It says what we want to do. It says what's important to us. And so I think we need to pay attention to kind of where we want to be and where we are, because we're trying to get those two things fairly close together. The finance function here is an important one, and it's led by the Finance Committee, which includes Jim Pascarella, Frank Serra, Joe Stapleton, Tim McGlinchey, and it's chaired by the guy who conveniently left the state, Tom Ells. And it is an advisory committee to the vestry. The Finance Committee doesn't make any, they can't spend money, they can't withhold money, they just give advice. Probably the largest thing we do is to prepare the budget every year. It is a recommended budget that is submitted to the vestry. The vestry can accept it, they can request changes, but that is the first function. And then the second function is there are always unbudgeted, unexpected expenses, and the Finance Committee will weigh in on those as well, either how we do it or where the funding might come from. So it's a full-time job. It's not just the budget and then we take the next 11 months off. But I thought, actually, Dave asked me to do it. That's why I'm doing it. I put a sheet on your table of where we are through the first 3 quarters of 2024. Just so we're all reading and interpreting the same thing. The column on the left of numbers is where we were this time last year. So through the first 9 months of 2023. So that's kind of where we were. The next column over is where we are through the first 3 quarters of this year. The next column over is actually annualizing the first 9 months of this year. So that's kind of where we're going to end up. If we stay on the current flight path, that's where we're going to end up. And then the column on the right side is the budget that we had prepared back at the end of last year. So that's where that's where we wanted to be. We didn't want to be there, but that's where we expected to be. So as you can see from some of the numbers here, it's always easier to budget for expenses because we know what they are and they're fairly fixed. The great unknown is contributions. How supportive is the parish going to be in supporting the church's activities? It is, Jane sent an email out saying it's important that we're positive and upbeat, which would suggest Jane's never been on a finance committee. But this is as positive and upbeat as I can be. We're actually ahead of where we expected to be on contributions, so well done, all of you. We could be farther ahead, but at least we're ahead a little bit. And that's primarily pledges and unpledged donations. Obviously, unpledged donations, we don't know what they're going to be or what to expect. Pledge donations, it's really important that you keep them current, and it appears that you have. So we're a little bit ahead of schedule there, and we've done a reasonably good job of managing expenses over the last several years. And again, they're easier to budget for. So we budgeted for a deficit of 400,000. We're currently on track to have one that's about 100,000 more. We normally get an increase in contributions at the end of the year as people make contributions for tax purposes. So we probably won't, at least I hope we won't get to 500,000, but we may. So that's where we are right now, and if you have questions, I'll make up an answer. Yeah.
I think I've already said what I was going to pledge, but if I want to increase it, who do I talk to?
Well,
Could you repeat the question, please?
I like Katie's question a lot.
I think we found our parishioner of the week. Katie asked, what can she do if she wants to increase her pledge? A lot. So talk to Susan.
Yeah, I can help. If it's something I can't help you with, I can put you to somebody, depending on what it is you're trying to do.
Maybe you could have a group meeting. Who else wants to increase their pledge? Excellent. Wendy. Oh, Wendy.
I think you said we have budgeted for a deficit of 400,000.
Correct.
Can you explain what that means?
That means we're going to spend more than we take in. I mean, we have to make some assumptions about where our revenue is going to be. We're fairly confident we know what our expenses are going to be, but revenue is always the tricky thing. We don't know, because it's a function of how many people will pledge and how much they're going to pledge. So we have to make an assumption about some of these things.
Where do we cover that deficit, or we don't?
Well, we have some reserves that we use to cover expenses. My big concern is, and the Finance Committee's concern is, at some point we will have to rely on the endowment. So far, we have not touched the endowment, but there are a number of churches in the diocese that once you start down that path, it becomes hard to stop, because the endowment contributes a certain amount of money to the budget every year based on the investment policy of the endowment committee. And the vestry approves the withdrawal rate. When you start taking money out of the endowment, that number gets smaller, which means your deficit gets bigger. And then you take more money out, and the number gets smaller again. And then
We have that in the Bible reading today about the meal and the oil.
A little bit
Well-
goes a long way, right, Susan?
well, we can all pray, but we need a plan too. Jim.
I see total expenses at 1.688 million,
Yes.
and that seems, in my memory, it seems higher than in years past. Can you say why it's so high?
Well, it's not.
Repeat the question.
Why are the expenses so high? It's actually not. If you go back and look at the last 4 or 5 years, it's been about a 2% increase. In fact, we're below where we were in about 2018. Now, we would expect in 2025 that number will go up, because we've added staff, we've converted some part-time people to full-time, and they get benefits. And we got this incredible new rector who comes at a great price, but worth it. See, I returned the favor.
I think Kirk had a question as well.
Kirk.
Could you talk about some of the big expenses that you see coming that ordinarily weren't coming?
Can I see large expenses that are coming that weren't coming? I mean, it's hard to know what's coming that I don't know about.
The large expenses that we didn't see coming that we've had.
Well, probably the first one that comes to mind is we had water damage to the Carey Center over here, and that was about $70,000 of expense that was not budgeted, but we had to pay it. So that was one big expense. This is an expensive campus to maintain. 3 or 4 years ago, when the tornadoes came through, that was $70,000 of tree work. We didn't budget for it. We weren't expecting it, but we have to pay for it. So it's those. I mean, the biggest single cost area is compensation, and then property is right behind that. Barb?
Can you talk for just a second about the Alternative Revenue Committee and when you might have something to present to us?
Where's John? Well, yes, there is an Alternative Revenue Committee, and John can certainly comment more on it, who leads the effort. There is a group of individuals in the church who are looking at, as the name would suggest, alternative sources of revenue. We're looking for way. I mean, we can keep asking people to make a pledge, increase the pledge, and bring in new members. That's all great, but we're trying to find a way to not rely solely on parishioner contributions. And the model that sort of brought this initiative to life was several years ago, the cathedral in downtown realized that they were not going to be able to pay all their bills with plate and pledge. So the leadership there took a decision. They bought a bunch of row houses on Chestnut Street, tore them down, and built an office building. And so they get the rental income from that office building. The diocese used to have their offices there, then they moved to Norristown. So we're not going to build an office building out here, but we're looking at what can we do, what are the ways that we can generate additional revenue. The first one that is already generating additional revenue is Sharon with her retreat business. So that was, and that's something that we expect to grow. We have to be flexible about how we use the buildings, because one of the things, and I think this is the case from what Sharon has said, a lot of retreat prospects want some sort of overnight accommodations. We don't have those. There's a church in St. Luke's in Germantown, took a dark, moldy old basement and turned it into a 60-bed dormitory. Parishioners went down, cleaned it up, painted it, put bunk beds in, and they've got a very active retreat business, retreat operation. So the purpose of alternative revenue is to kind of broaden our focus and not just look at stewardship and say, fix the problem, but look beyond the hill and see what else can we do. I mean, the barn sales are great, and if Outreach is willing to give up the money, we could certainly use it, but I suspect they won't. But yeah, so alternative revenue is looking at a lot of things. Nothing has been decided, and I guess your question was, when are you going to have something? I think, John, when will we have something to present?
Well, first of all, there are a couple of things that we can talk about right now.
Okay.
One is that
John, let's use the mic.
we have about 12 people, some of them are in this room, that are working on this, so it's not just me. And we've been working on this for about a year and a half. And one thing that I can tell you that I think has significant positive upside is our grant operation. With Jillian's help, we have several grants that have already been filed or about to be filed that could have substantial size grants. But the other initiatives we're intentionally keeping confidential because they're all in a formative stage. But the significant ones, and they could be very significant in terms of financial advantage for us, won't be realized for years and years, which is why we really need, because they involve development and things like that. So that is why we need to pay attention to the immediacy here. We can't get into a situation where we have to, expend all those reserves that Phil was referencing and dip into our endowment. So that's my report for now.
Okay. Other questions for Phil? Kay.
My understanding is that we, by the end of this year, will fully own the solar panels. And I was wondering, will we not start to see the maximum benefit and reduction of our utility bills this month year?
The question is about the solar field. that Kay believes we're going to fully own the solar field, and Jim Pascarella is going to give you a quick update on where we are with that and how it might impact utility costs here at St. Thomas.
Thank you. Great question. So thanks to the generosity, thank you to the generosity of many parishioners who gave financial underwriting and support to the solar project. Full funds are on hand to purchase the system in the fall, approximately 1 year from now. So that would conclude the first 5 years where there was the financial instrument that we used to develop and build the system allows for us, for the church, to buy the system and own it outright. And that can happen at 5 years and a day. And our vestry has approved the purchase, and Timothy Knox, who is the counsel for the church, will be working out all the details and finalizing that purchase. So the second part of that question had to do with what type of financial support does the utility savings provide to the church in the go forward? And the answer to that question is that it provides quite a bit of relief in terms of what the electric charges were to the campus. So in total, I think our average annual usage and utility bills for the electric run approximately $40,000 a year. And that'll be cut significantly, upwards of 90% or so, by virtue of the electric being essentially pre-purchased by the financial gifts to build the solar panels. So that does become an instrument for the decision makers and the leadership of the church in order to decide how to utilize the savings and how to support ongoing operations and the other initiatives that the vestry plans through its budget.
Jim, thank you very much. And we appreciate Jim and everyone involved in that effort's leadership. When I first heard about this, I said, this is an incredible good news story that we are caring for God's creation as part of our Genesis covenant, and we're helping the finances of the church and the stewardship of the financial aspects of the church. It's a win-win, truly. So I'm just so grateful for Jim and everyone's leadership. And it's important for you to know that the funds for the purchase of the solar field were already set aside. Those were there. So what the vestry did was essentially release those funds to fully purchase the system. So it's not taking additional capital, basically, to do that. Other financial questions for Phil? Bevan.
This isn't a question, but I just want to emphasize what a great job our financial committee's done in terms of when you look at inflation,
Bevan is the clerk on our vestry and active in many other ministries, including our altar guild. So I'm very grateful for Bevan.
I was just saying we really need to congratulate our financial committee, because if you look at our expenses, we're on par or lower than back in the 20-teens. And yet we've had huge expenses like having to dig out and waterproof this building, all the $70,000, and we were still on track along our old expense line. So that's pretty impressive, and that's due to their hard work and expertise, which I'm very impressed by. So I think we need to congratulate them.
And Bevan is an incredible math teacher, so listen to what she has to say. Any other financial questions? I want to talk about stewardship for 2025, because help is on the way, I can promise you. We have some ideas. But I want to make sure your 2024 present type questions are answered. Okay, so a quick reminder, just to give you the big picture on the finances. One of the things that's very nice about where we are right now, I know this can be daunting when you see all that red ink, and I want you to know that it gives me hives too. I don't like red ink. I'm allergic to deficits. So we're gonna climb out of this hole. But I do want you to know big picture. Unlike many other churches, we do not have debt. That's a big deal. We're not servicing debt right now. Phil mentioned earlier that we're relying on reserves. Now, I don't like to spend down cash reserves, but we do have those reserves in place. And Additionally, whenever we receive a bequest, that is a planned gift from someone who has died and included St. Thomas in their estate, 10% of that bequest is put into a vestry discretionary fund that was intended when it was first created to offset these types of deficits at the end of the year. So it's as if the finance team of the church planned for lean years where things would be difficult to kind of build up that fund in the endowment that the vestry could use at its discretion. Now, of course, that would require the vestry to release those funds. But I do want you to know that there is a mechanism in place when we receive bequests for 10% of that to be reserved if we had a deficit situation. I think many of you might be wondering, why are we in this place that we are financially? And that is a complex question. And the reality is that we talk a lot about money at the church because Jesus had a lot to say about money. In fact, he talked about it, I wouldn't say it's the number one topic, but it's up there. It's one of his top topics. Why? Because as Phil said earlier, it's about our values. Our budget speaks of our values. So where our treasure is, Jesus says, our hearts will be also. So when we think of our giving as a spiritual practice, and not just kind of, making budget, but a spiritual practice, through the action of giving, it can actually transform our hearts. So that's what I want you to remember today, okay? And that's the tone that we're going to take with 2025 stewardship. Some of you are probably wondering, why haven't I gotten my pledge cards for 2025 yet? Well, the short answer on that is we're doing a couple things differently, and we wanted to do a better job of educating the parish about Christian stewardship. So you'll see the mailing, which is coming out this week, will contain some written material about how to give to the church faithfully and biblically. And there are 4 main steps. You've heard me talk about these before briefly. The first is, if you're not giving to the church, please consider giving. Okay, the amount is not important. Just consider giving. Right now, we have about 54% of our parish that are making gifts on record. 54%. Now, you might be saying, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Not really. Actually, that's the average in the Episcopal Church. And we're actually doing a little bit better than the average. So I don't want you to worry about that number. We are going to make that as a goal for 2025 to increase that proportion of members of St. Thomas giving on record for our stewardship. Okay, so currently we're at about 54%. Our goal is 65%, which would be higher than just about any Episcopal church in the country. So that is a bold goal, but a good one. Okay, so the first thing is, if you're not giving, please consider giving financially in any amount. The second is, if you are currently giving, please consider making a pledge. Why is a pledge important? Because it shows the intentionality of the gift. Pledges can go up or down. Okay, this is not a legal document where you're signing, in blood or something that you have to give that amount. All you need to do is call Jillian and say, you know what, it's been a difficult year. I didn't get that commission I thought I might get. I need to adjust my pledge. It's totally fine. No harm, no foul. Okay, it is an intention between you and God. And it's that intentionality that matters. If you're pledging, consider giving proportionally. This is the biblical standard. Very often we get hung up on the tithe. I don't think God is obsessed about a percentage or an amount. I think what God wants us to do is give in proportion to what we have received from God's generous hand. So the average for most Americans is about 2.3 to 2.5% of their income is given away to charities, not just to the church, but to all of their charitable giving, about 2.3%. So what you can do is just figure out, okay, what am I currently giving? What's the proportion currently of my giving? And what I would invite you to do is to consider making incremental growth in your giving. So if let's just say you're at 3%, consider going to 3.5% of your income. So when Carol and when I was in graduate school at General Theological Seminary, I was actually able to increase the proportion of our family's gift to our parish, even though the amount was much lower, because I wasn't working full time like I had been. Okay, so it's not about the amount, it's about seeking to increase the proportionality of your gift. And the goal, the biblical standard, of course, is the tithe, 10%, but I would not recommend going from 2.5% to 10. That is too big of an adjustment. Okay, the idea here is to make incremental growth. Okay, incremental growth until you reach the tithe. All right, so it's those 4 steps. Now, in terms of our stewardship team, you can take heart that we have a revitalized stewardship team. You're going to be hearing more from them in the weeks to come. But just what I want you to know is that our big goal this year, in addition to participation, remember, from 54 to 65% of the parish, is to increase our giving by 10%. Okay, a 10% leap. Now, let's just say you pledged 1,000. What that means is in 2025, you would pledge 1,100. That's a 10% adjustment, okay? Now, you may say, well, I could probably do something like that. Here's the thing. If we were able to do this, a 10% jump in our annual giving, we would be probably one of a handful of Episcopal churches who were able to pull that off. This would be a major, major win if we were able to do it. Now, I can tell you it's possible, because in other parishes I've led, we've been able to do it. So our goal in 2025, just to be clear, is a 10% growth. Now, in terms of the big picture, the way that we get out of this hole is through vision. And that's why strategic planning is critical. What I can share is just because it's real numbers, real life. At my last church, St. John's in Tallahassee, Florida, through those strategic plans, which caused us to grow and to stretch, and it was challenging, but what I can tell you is, over the course of my time at St. John's over 11 years, we were able to increase our annual giving by 40%. Okay? So we can get there. We can get there. We were able to increase annual giving by 40%. We did a capital campaign, and our goal was $3 million, and we raised $6 million. We raised double that. For planned giving, for our foundation or endowment like we have here, we went from 7 planned gifts to 90. From 7 to 90, okay? So one of the things that I sometimes will hear is, well, if you're asking this much of the parish financially, like if you were going to do a capital campaign and you have an annual fund goal, and is it going to water down the giving? And the answer is no, because generosity begets generosity. Okay, so it's kind of counterintuitive, and it all has to do with God. But at the end of the day, what I want you to know is we can make improvements in all of those giving categories: annual giving, capital giving, as well as our endowment or planned gifts. It is possible. I've seen it with my own eyes, okay? But it all comes back to vision, and that's why the strategic plan is so important. Do you have questions about stewardship or finances? Debbie?
I just wonder, how much do we have to contribute to the diocese this year? And are we meeting that goal? I don't think we met it every year.
It's a great question. Thanks, Debbie. So you may not know this, but we do not receive any money from the Episcopal Diocese of Pennsylvania. We actually make an offering as a church to the diocese each year with joy. Now, what I can tell you is that this year, Phil, it's about $91,000 that we give to the diocese. Now, you might ask, where does that go? Yes, it supports the bishop's office, the staff, but it mostly is going to smaller, struggling churches throughout the area. So it is a form of reaching out beyond ourselves to care for others, particularly those who are vulnerable. Okay, that's why that diocesan assessment is so important. Other questions? Oh, Debbie, you asked it, how are we doing? This year we're current. Last year I think we missed the target by just a little bit, but this year our plan is to fully meet that goal. Other questions on finances, stewardship? Jane, do you want to add anything on stewardship? Okay.
No, I think you've done it.
Okay. Lastly, on stewardship, circle this date. You're going to get a mailing soon. The in-gathering Sunday, where we bring our pledge cards and place them in the offering basin on the altar as a symbol of that intentionality, is November 24th. In-gathering, November 24th, and we'll have a great breakfast together. So come on out. We'll have food, fellowship. We'll offer our gifts to God. Lastly, I mentioned in church that we will have a seminarian. Now, this is not a staff member. It doesn't cost St. Thomas anything to do this, but what it means is that the diocese is recognizing us as a teaching parish, a place where leaders can be developed. So beginning next Sunday, Amy Crawford, who's a senior at General Theological Seminary, will be here. Just a little bit about Amy. You'll be hearing more about her in the email coming up this week. But Amy is fabulous. She lives in Wynwood, Pennsylvania, with her husband and 4 children. She is a mental health professional. She's a therapist and counselor. She also has done human resources consulting and recruiting. So she has great life experience that she's bringing to the church. She is a senior right now, and we're not exactly sure what she's going to focus on during her time here. We're going to figure that out in the coming weeks. But it's wonderful that in addition to Deacon Phil this year, we're adding a seminarian, Amy Crawford, and you'll have a chance to get to know her better in the weeks to come. Are there any remaining questions? I know we're pretty much at time here, but I want to see if you have any other questions or comments that you'd like to share. Susan.
Will the seminarian be here every day or just on Sundays or 2 days a week? Or
Susan asked, when will the seminarian be here? And we're still figuring that out. I would say that on average about 8 hours a week, so probably like 1 or 2 weekdays for part of the day, and then definitely on Sundays, Susan. Other questions? Thank you so much for being here at this forum. It's a joy to serve as a leader here at the community. Bless you all, and see you back at 5 o'clock. Remember the Remembrance service and the Mozart Requiem.